Here are the top stories for today, August 11, 2021. Aid is here. Local government units in Metro Manila roll out financial aid from the national government for those affected by the 2-week enhanced community quarantine. Fully vaccinated individuals who had a direct contact with a person infected with COVID-19 will undergo a 14-day quarantine as the government implements tighter measures to curb its spread. The Foreign Affairs Department will ask Hong Kong to consider the international vaccination certificate issued by the Bureau of Quarantine to Filipinos. And no end to atrocities, the military reveals that terrorist New People's Army committed 111 violations of the international humanitarian law on the first half of this year. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Malacanang welcomed the country's exit from recession in the second quarter. This after the Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, reports that the country's gross domestic product grew 11.8% year-on-year during the April to June period. This figure is also the country's strongest performance in more than 3 decades and marked the end of 5 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque is hopeful that the country's economy would continue to recover despite the imposition of the 2-week enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila and other areas.
Well, nagagalak po kami na nagkaroon tayo ng ganyang kataas na pagbangon ng ating ekonomiya. And we're hoping po na bagamat tayo po ay nag-lockdown ngayon ng 2 weeks, na makakabawi pa rin tayo sa last quarter. Ginawa nga po natin itong lockdown na ito ngayon na para po makabangon tayo ng last quarter ng taon dahil yung last quarter po, traditionally, yan yung pinakamasiglang panahon para sa ekonomiya.
House Majority Leader Martin Romualdez also welcomed the country's emergence out of economic recession. He said the country's dramatic growth in the second quarter is brought about by the solidarity among branches of government as well as the private sector. The distribution of the government's financial assistance, or ayuda, starts today in areas placed under the enhanced community quarantine status. Marita Moahe has the story.
In Parañaque City, the ceremonial distribution of financial assistance commenced this morning at the Green Heights Village in Barangay San Isidro. DSWD Secretary Rolando Joselito Bautista and Mayor Edwin Olivares led the distribution of the cash aid to 604,000 beneficiaries. Each qualified individuals will receive 1,000 pesos up to 4,000 pesos. In Pasay City, Mayor Emmy Calixto Rubiano said she has ordered the assignment of disbursement officers in all villages. Pasay City received 356 million pesos for ECQ subsidy. Meanwhile, Pasay City resorted to buying more than 88 million pesos worth of grocery packs to be personally delivered to families who will not get cash. This after the local government got 650 million pesos for financial aid, which is 30 million pesos lower than last year. In Taguig City, 28 barangays will each get 250,000 pesos as aid for the entire period of the enhanced community quarantine. This is on top of the almost 300,000 relief packs being distributed by the city to its citizens. In Bataan, the provincial government has started deploying trailers and dump trucks carrying thousands of 25-kilo bags of rice to the 237 barangays of the 11 towns and 1 city. Governor Albert Garcia also announced the reactivation of the Kusina sa Barangay that will distribute cooked food to villagers, similar to last year when Bataan was first placed under ECQ. The list of indigent families in the province is also underway for the distribution of financial assistance. And in Cagayan de Oro City, the encoding of profiles of cash and beneficiaries has been extended as about 90,000 names in the initial list needed to be updated. The City Social Welfare and Development said they have found a discrepancy that needed to be corrected. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Marita Moahe.
All individuals who are fully vaccinated but have direct contact with a person infected with COVID-19 are now required to undergo a 14-day quarantine period. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases decided to suspend the shortened testing and quarantine protocols for fully vaccinated individuals to slow down the surge in COVID-19 cases and to stop the further spread of the variants. The Department of Health defines close contacts as having exposure during the 2 days before and the 14 days after the onset of symptoms or an individual with probable or confirmed case of COVID-19. The DOH considers a person exposed to an infected individual if he has a face-to-face contact within 1 meter for at least 15 minutes, direct physical contact, direct care for a patient without using personal protective equipment, or other situations as indicated by local risk assessments. In Western Visayas, the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG, says it is still waiting for the final guidelines on the hiring of contact tracers. DILG Regional Director Juan Jovian Ingeniero said the rehiring of contact tracers will be fast-tracked once the funds are downloaded to the regional office. Over 3,000 contact tracers were hired by the DILG during the first hiring last year and another 974 during the last batch whose contract ended on August 8. President Rodrigo Duterte earlier approved the request for more funds to rehire the 15,000 contact tracers nationwide for another 5 months. In Bulacan, the provincial government says it will not implement a hard lockdown amid the discovery of 7 Delta variant cases in the province. Governor Daniel Fernando said the decision was made following consultations with the mayors. He said the local government does not want to impede the operations of businesses as well as work in the essential establishments, but reminds Bulaqueños to continue to adhere to health protocols. The governor called on Bulaqueños to practice more discipline and individual responsibility, which are the keys to beating the virus. Hospitals in Cagayan Valley beefed up their workforce to attend to the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the province. Dr. Glenn Matthew Bagao, chief of the Cagayan Valley Medical Center, says they have already used additional 50 beds to accommodate more cases. Cagayan Province accounts for the bulk of patients, mostly from Tuguegarao City. Mayor Jefferson Soriano said Tuguegarao noted an average daily attack rate of 31.8%, which is the highest in the province and in the region. Tuguegarao will be placed under the strictest community quarantine status starting tomorrow, August 12, until August 21. In General Santos City, the bidding process for the lease or rental of ultra-low temperature freezers has started to expand their COVID-19 vaccine storage. City Administrator and lawyer Arnel Zapato said an undisclosed firm made an offer to the local government last month for the use of its freezers, which could reportedly handle the required temperature storage of Pfizer vaccines. Pfizer vaccines require storage with temperatures between -80 and -60 degrees Celsius. The city government has expanded its COVID-19 vaccination activities in the past 3 weeks due to the increased allocation of vaccines such as Sinovac, AstraZeneca, Sputnik V, and Janssen. It says additional vaccination teams will be put up to further fast-track the ongoing vaccine rollout in the city. Over 2,000 vials of Moderna COVID-19 vaccines allocated by the national government to Negros Occidental and Bacolod City arrived at the Bacolod Silay Airport on Tuesday. Both Bacolod City and Negros Occidental will each receive 1,070 vials of the U.S.-made vaccine. Each multiple-dose vial is good for at least 10 doses. Aside from the Moderna jabs, the province and the city also received 10,000 vials of Sinovac's CoronaVac shots each. As the province only received a minimal supply of the 100,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine, the local government said they are hoping more will arrive soon. Eastern Visayas also received the second shipment of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccines purchased by the central government. The Department of Health reported that 5,400 doses arrived at the Tacloban Airport on Monday, bringing the total number of Moderna vaccines in the region to over 21,000. The 5,400 doses of vaccines will be allocated for Tacloban as the city continues to inoculate its priority groups such as health workers, senior citizens, and those with comorbidities. The region has already received more than 900,000 doses of vaccines since it started vaccination last March. The vaccination program has already covered 100% of frontline health workers, 31% of senior citizens, 41.9% of adults with comorbidities, and 9.1% of economic frontliners. Still to come, tax relief for manufacturers of medical oxygen. The government says, why not, as it notes a high demand for the commodity amid the pandemic. And the Labor Department says some 640,000 OFWs have returned to the country amid the pandemic. Details ahead. Keep it here on the PNA Newsroom.
Commander Dito Ocampo po ng Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary para sa kumpanyang Disiplina Muna na pinangungunahan ng DILG. Bakit natin kailangan magpabakuna laban sa COVID-19? Dahil mahal mo ang iyong sarili, pamilya at bayan. Ang bakuna ang tiyak na paraan para tuluyang mapigilan ang pagkalat ng virus. May mga patunay na mababa ang porsyento ng pagkalat ng COVID-19 sa mga nabakunahan na. At matapos mabakunahan, malaki na ang tsansa na makabalik ka sa normal mong pamumuhay. Kaya tulad ko magparehistro na at magpabakuna na kontra COVID-19. Muli po, ako si Commander Dito Ocampo, Disiplina Muna Ambassador. Nagpapaalala, huwag matakot magpabakuna dahil bida ang may disiplina. Magparehistro tayo at magpabakuna para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bayan.
Ang disiplinadong Pilipino ay rehistrado para maging bakunado. Kaya tayo na po't magparehistro at magpabakuna para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bansa. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Malacanang has tasked the country's economic managers to decide on the details of giving tax relief to manufacturers of medical-grade oxygen. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said tax relief is meant to entice manufacturers to produce more oxygen in case of a spike in cases due to the Delta variant. President Rodrigo Duterte earlier announced that he is considering talking with Congress about giving tax relief to what he described as a vital component in the country's fight against COVID-19. Last week, World Health Organization Country Representative Dr. Rabindra Abeyasinghe urged the Philippines to increase medical-grade oxygen to avoid running short of supply. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, on Monday assured that the country still has enough supply of medical-grade oxygen. The Philippines is asking the Hong Kong government to consider the international vaccination certificate being issued by the Bureau of Quarantine in place of its required recognized vaccination record. Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. earlier revealed that Hong Kong is not accepting the country's vaccination cards. The Philippines is currently under Group A specified or high-risk places in Hong Kong's COVID-19 travel advisory, meaning all Filipino travelers will be subject to a 21-day quarantine period. Under this category, all vaccinated individuals are also required to present a negative RT-PCR result on top of the recognized vaccination record. Hong Kong was set to lift its travel ban on the Philippines on August 9, which would allow more than 3,000 stranded overseas Filipino workers to fly to the former British colony. Meanwhile, the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration warns aspiring OFWs against a social media account offering jobs in Japan. The POEA said the advertisement of the supposed job vacancy has been there for a long time and is being used by unscrupulous individuals. The post has already been taken down. The agency reminded job applicants that many countries are not yet accepting foreign workers due to the pandemic. Job applicants may opt to visit the POEA website and look at the list of vacancies there. The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, said over 641,000 overseas Filipino workers have been returned home since the start of the pandemic last year. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III said at least 9,000 OFWs are still undergoing required quarantine protocols. He thanked the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases for shortening the quarantine requirement for returning OFWs, especially for those who are only in the country to visit their loved ones. Under the new protocol, all returning OFWs are only required to undergo a 10-day quarantine upon arrival, with RT-PCR testing required on the 7th day. Meanwhile, fully vaccinated OFWs, including travelers, will be required a 7-day quarantine with RT-PCR testing done on the 5th day. Bello assured that the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration is continuously seeking funds to help returning OFWs, especially now that Metro Manila is under ECQ. The Philippine Statistics Authority Negros Oriental office in Dumaguete City is now accepting walk-ins and non-city residents for registration to the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys. The PSA said they are now allowing this to fast-track the registration of more people to the government's National Identification Program. The PSA is targeting more than 800,000 registrants by the end of the year. As of last week, about 600,000 individuals have already registered for the PhilSys program in Negros Oriental. The PSA has opened registration sites at the Robinson's Place Shopping Mall, the Lorenzo Building in Barangay Daro, and at the City Hall. Applicants are requested to bring 2 valid government-issued identification cards. The PSA is also continuing its satellite registrations at institutions and offices. The municipality of Cabayan in Benguet has declared a state of calamity after about 85% of its agricultural products were damaged by monsoon rains. Cabayan has recorded about 123 million pesos in damages to crops and infrastructure. Vice Mayor Mircoles Lamses said the town suffered from the 3 weeks of continuous downpour that led to the damage of 85% of its crops and some farm-to-market roads. About 720 farmers have been affected by the calamity. Cabayan produces nearly 64,000 metric tons of assorted vegetables per year, with cauliflower having the biggest annual production at over 8,000 metric tons. About 80% of the residents rely on agriculture as their source of income. The municipality is highly dependent on internal revenue allotment, which this year is estimated at 122 million pesos. Up next, the military says the New People's Army continues to commit violations of the international humanitarian law this year. And going for that golden dream, student athletes are urged to apply for admission at the newly created National Academy of Sports. We're back after a quick break. Stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Hi everyone, James Deacon here. The COVID-19 vaccines are finally here, and the government wants to make sure the vaccines reach us. So let's do our part by making sure that we get registered to be included in the vaccination list of our LGU. You can register right in the comfort and safety of your own homes through your LGU's online registration platform. And you can also register on-site in the vaccination venues or through your barangay. Remember, getting vaccinated is the first step towards ending this pandemic. So let's do our part as disciplined citizens. Bida ang may disiplina. Magpakarehistro, magpabakuna para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bayan.
Yorme Isko po, bakuna po ang ating kasangga sa patuloy na pandemya. Kaya upang maproteksyonan ang ating sarili at mga mahal sa buhay, huwag po nating palampasin ang pagkakataong magpabakuna sa lalong madaling panahon. Tandaan na sa patuloy na laban kontra COVID-19, ang disiplinadong Pilipino ay rehistrado para maging bakunado. Magparehistro, magpabakuna para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bayan. Manila, God first.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. The armed forces of the Philippines slammed the continued violation of international humanitarian laws, or IHL, by the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, and the National Democratic Front. The AFP recorded 111 more cases of IHL violations, ranging from using child warriors, destruction of civilian properties, to unabated landmine use and willful killings only in the first half of 2021. This is on top of the 1,500 plus violations committed since the year 2010. Brigadier General Joel Alejandro Naknak, director of the AFP Center for Law of Armed Conflict, said the IHL violations previously committed from 2010 to 2020 are now being investigated by the Commission on Human Rights. These cases will also be passed on to local courts, where they would be charged with violation of the country's localized human rights laws, including Republic Act 9851. NTF-LCAC spokesperson Undersecretary Severo Catura meanwhile said having the AFP Center for Law of Armed Conflict is concrete proof of the country's steadfast commitment to IHL. Following the Philippines' feat at the recent Tokyo 2020 Olympics, talented students are invited to follow the footsteps of national athletes by joining the National Academy of Sports. The NAS aims to identify and promote academically competent and athletically talented Filipino youth from all walks of society. Education Secretary Leonor Briones lauded the gallant efforts of gold medalist weightlifter Heidelin Diaz, boxing silver medalist Nesty Petesio and Carlo Paalam, and boxing bronze medalist Yumir Marshall. She also commended the 15 others who made it to the quadrennial games. Briones said the Filipinos' potential in the field of sports is the reason the Department of Education wants more learners to be trained at the NAS. The Academy is currently conducting its annual search for competent, exceptional, notable, and talented student-athlete scholars, or NASAN SAS. The application for scholarship for school year 2021 to school year 2022 is extended until August 14. Presidential Communications Operations Office Secretary Martin Andanar acknowledged the delicate balance Cagayan de Oro has to employ in COVID-19 response. Cagayan de Oro is under enhanced community quarantine and on alert level 4 due to the high number of COVID-19 cases. Andanar explained that the city is the melting pot in Region 10 where Northern Mindanao commerce passes through. He acknowledged that Mayor Oscar Moreno has tough decisions to make as they would affect Cagayan de Oro and the rest of Northern Mindanao. In a separate interview, Moreno said he was thankful that Andanar sees how the local government is responding to the pandemic. As of Monday, Cagayan de Oro still has 2,146 active COVID-19 cases. The Ministry of Social Services and Development distributed assisted mobility devices to over 300 indigent persons with disabilities. This is in celebration of the 43rd National Disability and Rehabilitation Week in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. The MSD on Thursday distributed 46 assistive devices to indigent PWDs of Pagalungan, Parang, and Matanog in Maguindanao. Last week, 243 indigent PWDs from Maguindanao, Lanao del Sur, and the Special Geographic Area of North Cotabato received the same devices. Assistive devices consist of wheelchairs, quad canes or walkers, crutches, canes, and folding canes. The ministry is set to transport 650 assistive devices to Tawi-Tawi, Basilan, and Sulu. Indigent PWDs can also avail of a monthly stipend through the Kalinga Para sa Kapansanan program, seed capital for livelihood through the Bangsamoro Sagip Kabuhayan program, as well as healthcare aid through the Bangsamoro Critical Assistance for Indigents in response to emergency assistance. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. Aid is here. Local government units in Metro Manila roll out financial aid from the national government for those affected by the 2-week enhanced community quarantine. Fully vaccinated individuals who had a direct contact with a person infected with COVID-19 will undergo a 14-day quarantine as the government implements tighter measures to curb its spread. The Foreign Affairs Department will ask Hong Kong to consider the international vaccination certificate issued by the Bureau of Quarantine to Filipinos. And no end to atrocities, the military reveals that terrorist New People's Army committed 111 violations of the international humanitarian law on the first half of this year. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, everyone.